Samsy. Story time with Ronnie. Hey guys, we got Journey to the Center of the Earth, part 23. And what are we doing? Well, we're just getting ready to leave Rolf C. Hoyer campground up near Greer. And we've been here for a week or so, and then we're gonna use the dump station and head over to Wynn for another week or so there. This is pretty much our standard routine for the summertime Phoenix, is when I just can't take it no more, I head up to the mountains for a little reprieve. So we'll sit here for the first few minutes while it's raining and I'm getting stuff ready to leave. So we'll do that. Now this story, Journey to the Center of the Earth. Harry got lost. He was by himself, and he just discovered that no one else is around, and he went backwards, and he still didn't find anybody, and he couldn't hear anything. So it's starting to dawn on him just exactly what this actually means. So let's pick it up there. Only the echoes of my own footsteps could be heard. At last I stopped. I could scarcely realize the fact of my isolation. I was quite willing to think that I had made a mistake, but not that I was lost. If I had made a mistake, I might find my way. If lost, I shuddered to think of it. Come, said I to myself. Since there is only one road, and they must come by it, we shall at least meet. All I have to do is still go upwards. Perhaps, however, not seeing me and forgetting I was ahead, they may have gone back in search of me. Still, even in this case, if I make haste, I shall get up to them. There can be no doubt about the matter. But as I spoke these last words aloud, it would have been quite clear to any listener, had there been one, that I was by no means convinced of the fact. Moreover, in order to associate together these simple ideas and to reunite them under the form of reasoning required some time. I could not all at once bring my brain to think. Then another dread doubt fell upon my soul. After all, was I ahead? Of course I was. Hans was no doubt following behind, preceded by my uncle. I perfectly recollected his having stopped for a moment to strap his baggage on his shoulder. I now remembered this trifling detail. It was, I believe, just at that very moment that I had determined to continue my route. Again, thought I, reasoning as calmly as was possible, there is another sure means of not losing my way, a thread to guide me through the labyrinthine, subterraneous retreat, one which I had forgotten, my faithful river. This course of reasoning roused my drooping spirits, and I resolved to resume my journey without further delay. No time was to be lost. It was at this moment that I had reason to bless the thoughtfulness of my uncle, when he refused to allow the eider-duck hunter to close the orifices of the hot spring. That small fissure in the great mass of granite, this beneficent spring, after having saved us from thirst during so many days, would now enable me to regain the right road. Having come to this mental decision, I made up my mind before I started upwards that ablution would certainly do me a great deal of good. I stopped to plunge my hands and forehead in the pleasant water of the Hansbach stream, blessing its presence as a certain consolation. Conceive my horror and stupefaction. I was treading a hard, dusty, shingly road of granite, the stream on which I reckoned had wholly disappeared. Ooh, baby, that's the end of chapter 23. All right, let's move right into chapter 24. Lost. No words in any language can depict my utter despair. I was literally buried alive, with no other expectation before me but to die in a slow, horrible torture of hunger and thirst. Mechanically, I crawled about, feeling the dry and arid rock. Never to my fancy had I ever felt anything so dry. But I frantically asked myself, how had I lost the course of the flowing stream? There could be no doubt it had ceased to flow into the gallery in which I now was. Now I began to understand the cause of the strange silence which prevailed when last I tried if any appeal from my companions might perchance reach my ear. It so happened that when I first took an imprudent step in the wrong direction, I did not perceive the absence of the all-important stream. It was now quite evident that when we halted, another tunnel must have received the waters of the little torrent, and that I had unconsciously entered a different gallery. To what unknown depths had my companions gone? Where was I? How to get back? Clue or landmark, there was absolutely none. My feet left no signs on the granite and shingle. My brain throbbed with agony as I tried to discover the solution of this terrible problem. My situation, after all, sophistry and reflection, had finally to be summed up in 3 awful words. Lost. 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 Lost at a depth which to my finite understanding appeared to be immeasurable. These 30 leagues of the crust of the earth weighed upon my shoulders like the globe on the shoulders of Atlas. I felt myself crushed by the awful weight. It was indeed a position to drive the sanest man to madness. I tried to bring my thoughts back to the things of the world so long forgotten. It was with the greatest difficulty that I succeeded in doing so. Hamburg, the house on the Koenigstrasse, my dear cousin Gretchen, all that world which had before vanished like a shadow, floated before me, my now vivid imagination. There they were before me. But how unreal! Under the influence of a terrible hallucination, I saw the whole incidents of our journey pass before me like the scenes of a panorama. The ship and its inmates, Iceland, M. Fredriksson, and the great summit of Mount Sneffels. I said to myself that if in my position I retained the most faint and shadowy outline of a hope, it would be a sure sign of approaching delirium. It were better to give way wholly to despair. In fact, did I but reason with calmness and philosophy, what human power was there in existence able to take me back to the surface of the earth, and ready, too, to split asunder, to rend in twain, those huge and mighty vaults which stand above my head? Who could enable me to find my road and regain my companions. Insensate folly and madness to entertain even a shadow of hope. "Oh, uncle," was my despairing cry. This was the only word of reproach which came to my lips, for I thoroughly understood. Hang on a second. Okay, I can see we're changing there. We're done with the rain. So let's just take a peek and see what's going on here. There I am. I'm doing my thing, hooking up the Jeep. And, yeah, nothing real exciting here, you know. There was a little bit of excitement, but I am choosing not to speak of it because it is still so very traumatic to me. It's not that bad. I forgot to put the, okay, here we go. I forgot to put the awning that's out over the door in. So when I started Ronnie, the awning locked into position. I heard it lock. Oh, okay, no big deal. And you know, I go in and out, and the dang thing is out, and I never notice it. And I'm rolling. There's a group of guys pulled up behind me, and you know, I'm by myself trying to hook up here, and they're all like, "Hi, you gotta hurry up! What are you doing?" Blah blah blah. You know, I was there for like 90 seconds. You know, so so here we go. We're taking off, and all of a sudden, you know, bang. Bang, I'm hearing something hit, and I can't quite figure out what's going on. So I finally stop and get out and have a look, and it's the awning over the door. And so if you want to know just how good those awnings are, I must have hit at least a half a dozen trees and banged it, and it still works just fine. Fortunately, it wasn't the great big awning. I think I would have noticed that one. Anyway, so with all that rain, there's all kinds of little water runs and ruts and stuff through the campground, so you can see just how rough it is there. And every once in a while, it activates that braking system. But that's why you don't set those things up to be so sensitive. So here I am here, and I figured it out that the awning's out, and I'm like, oh shoot. I have to turn it off. So I just have to go a little ways up here, and I can turn the corner because those guys are still behind me, and they're, you know. Anyway, so yeah, because in order to get, you have to turn the key off in order to get the thing to unlock. And so I get up around the corner here, and it takes, you know, a couple of 3 minutes to turn it off, get the awning in, get it ready to start back up again. So we just kind of goof around a little bit, but that's just one of those things that can happen. You know, you get rushed, and if you're by yourself, there's no one really to go around and make sure that you got it all right. So you gotta be good on your own, I guess. Okay, see, here I am turning off here, and you'll see those guys go zooming right by right away. The guy was in such a hurry; he was gonna cut across through the campgrounds across the. And I'm like, just wait a minute! Holy cow! So here I am now, and I'm trying to figure it out. So eventually, I'll shut it down and pull the thing in, and yeah, I am not too pleased about it. And I think, you know, I had some cab view of this whole affair here, and I didn't include it. I guess I could have, but yeah, I'm pretty sure there was a whole lot of Tourette's going on there. Okay, let's get back to this story. So, insensate folly and madness to entertain even a shadow of hope. "Oh, uncle," was my despairing cry. This was the only word of reproach which came to my lips, for I thoroughly understood how deeply and sorrowfully the worthy professor would regret my loss, and how in his turn he would patiently seek for me. When I at last began to resign myself to the fact that no further aid was to be expected from man, and knowing that I was utterly powerless to do anything for my own salvation, I kneeled with earnest fervor and asked assistance from heaven. The remembrance of my innocent childhood the memory of my mother, only known in my infancy. Easy there. I finally figured it out. Oh, I got to turn it off. Okay, so now I turn it off and go get the awning in and then fire back up again. Only known in my infancy, came welling forth from my heart. I had recourse to prayer, and little as I had right to be remembered by him whom I had forgotten in the hour of prosperity, and whom I so tardily invoked, I prayed earnestly and sincerely. This renewal of my youthful faith brought about a much greater amount of calm, and I was enabled to concentrate all my strength and intelligence on the terrible realities of my unprecedented situation. I had about me that which I at first wholly forgot: 3 days' provisions. Moreover, my water bottle was quite full. Nevertheless, the one thing which it was impossible to do was to remain alone. Try to find my companions I must, at any price. But which course should I take? Should I go upwards, or again descend? Doubtless it was right to retrace my steps in an upward direction. By doing this with care and coolness, I must reach the point where I had turned away from the rippling stream. I must find the fatal bifurcation or fork. Once at this spot, once the river at my feet, I could, at all events, regain the awful crater of Mount Sneffels. Why had I not thought of this before? Yes, boy, it's really bouncing around in there, and that little braking system thing. So that'll tell you just how effective that thing is, you know. This, at least, was a reasonable hope of safety. The most important thing to do was to discover the bed of the Hansbach. After a slight meal and a draught of water, I rose like a giant refreshed. Leaning heavily on my pole, I began the ascent of the gallery. The slope was very rapid and rather difficult, but I had advanced hopefully and carefully, like a man who at last is making his way out of a forest and knows there's only one road to follow. During 1 whole hour, nothing happened to check my progress. As I advanced, I tried to recollect the shape of the tunnel. To recall to my memory certain projections of rocks, to persuade myself that I had followed certain winding routes before, but no one particular sign could I bring to mind, and I was soon forced to allow that this gallery would never take me back to the point at which I had separated myself from my companions. It was absolutely without issue, a mere blind alley in the earth. The moment at length came when, facing the solid rock, I knew my fate, and fell inanimate on the arid floor. To describe the horrible state of despair and fear into which I had then fell would now be vain and impossible. My last hope, the courage which had sustained me, drooped before the sight of this pitiless granite rock. Lost in a vast labyrinth, the sinuosities of which spread in every direction, without guide, clue, or compass, it was a vain and useless task to attempt flight. All that remained to me was to lie down and die. To lie down and die, the most cruel and horrible of deaths. It was, no. In my state of mind, the idea came into my head that one day, perhaps, when my fossil bones were found, their discovery so far below the level of the earth might give rise to Solomon. Not Solomon. I wanted it to be King Solomon. Here we go. It gave rise to solemn and interesting scientific discussions. Whew. I tried to cry loud, but hoarse, hollow, and inarticulate sounds alone could make themselves heard through my parched lips. I literally panted for breath. In the midst of all these horrible sources of anguish and despair, a new horror took possession of my soul. My lamp, by falling down, had gone out of order. I had no means of repairing it. Its light was already becoming paler and paler, and soon would expire. With a strange sense of resignation and despair, I watched the luminous current in the coil getting less and less. A procession of shadows moved, flashing along the granite wall. I scarcely dared to lower my eyelids, fearing to lose the last spark of this fugitive light. Every instant it seemed to me that it was about to vanish and leave me forever in utter darkness. Oh boy. All right, let's take a look here. We're getting close to wrapping this thing up for today at least. Well, probably. We got a lot more here, and we're just going to get out of this here campground, and then we're going to head over. I think we're heading over to Wynn because it's summertime, so we spend a week or so here, and then we go a week or so over there. It depends on, how many reservations and stuff there are. Oh yeah, the dump station, and we're not going to do no dump station video, so just enjoy this little bit here. So let's just call it quits right there. Thanks so much for coming along, and we'll just do this here thing. Sam C, and we'll leave you just a few minutes of the big old Rosie. There you go, you big old Rosie.